Yeah, I think one interesting approach is the pricing page. So pretty much everyone who's going to be doing some kind of PLG and SaaS usually has a pricing page. And it's a great place to segment high value, high intent visitors from your lower tier customers that are better served by self-service. And, if you can do that, well, then build it out from there through things like interactive demos, better onboarding, etc. One of the things that I heard from a previous event was that we don't do A/B testing or a lot of experimentation because it only yields small incremental gains, and we can't create large step changes by testing our way through it. And it was interesting because um, I actually heard a great example by Jess Tillis at Fivetrain, who leads their product-led growth, about how they actually rolled out an entirely new go-to-market PLG motion that results in over 20% of their net new revenue now. And it really kind of illustrated to me how effective experimentation, and not just A/B testing, but experimentation in general, can be to de-risk, something large like a new go-to-market motion. And some of the ways she went about specifically being successful at it. Some of the takeaways here were that she definitely had clear hypotheses when she started this. Like, Fivetran is a enterprise, sales and marketing organization, but they recognized that there were a lot of smaller organizations that needed their solution. It's about syncing data and data warehousing and building data pipelines, and smaller organizations need that. And they weren't effectively servicing them, nor were they really helping their sales team focus on the higher value organizations. So they had this hypothesis that there were a whole bunch of prospects hitting the site that could self-serve into that, and they could generate revenue from them, and then move the higher value or leads to the sales organization. So clear hypotheses, clear revenue goals. The important takeaway too is they had clear success metrics. They were looking at conversion rates from self-serve and the lead funnel to qualified opportunities. They were looking at the ACV, so longer term revenue outcomes of both of those funnels. And they were looking at the payback period on both, because really, investing in PLG is an investment in a more efficient funnel. So they had clear success metrics, and they A/B tested their way through it with, instrumentation in their product. So they were looking at self-serve model, but then who's looking at more complex integrations, who's looking at like more expensive data warehouses, and can we use those signals to identify, higher value enterprise clients. And through this experiment-led process of rolling out their PLG funnel, we're really able to de-risk this approach for their leadership team as well as their key stakeholders, and ultimately rolled it out across the organization. So this is all to say that experimentation and new PLG motions kind of can go hand in hand, and you don't have to look at it as just a way to like test the button color on your site or test just wording. You can really experiment your way through to more effective and more profitable go-to-market motions like PLG.
And I just want to emphasize, I don't know what it was due to, maybe conversion rate optimization, but A/B testing certainly has been kind of pigeonholed into this like very surface level type things, incremental gains, hard to attribute. And the most successful and strategic leaders we're seeing are able to conceptualize that experimentation spans really at every facet of an organization. And having that experimentation capability and background really allows you to roll out and work towards some of these larger initiatives in a data-backed way. I'm sure most of us kind of view it like that, if that's you. And once you do see this, I think it's going to seem obvious and open up a lot of capabilities.
Yeah, it lets you take risks, right? If you have a structured system for experimentation, you might try things like rolling out PLG that without that just might seem too risky, and you never go down that path. So obviously to roll out PLG, you need good data, right? And intent. If we think about PLG, it really is about showing value and identifying intent before you engage in the sales conversation. So Third-party intent providers, most of our customers are using one or more of these type of solutions, like 6sense, for example, that give you sort of third-party intent. But I also think that, there's an opportunity to better capitalize on first party intent, like the actual data that you have that you're probably sitting, many of our customers are sitting on tons and tons of data about, the way that prospects and leads and customers are engaging with their website, with their product, and with their organization, and using that to identify signals. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on, like, even from the website perspective, first party signals and first party data, and how to better use that to identify intent.
Certainly. I think it falls neatly into this like interactive type approach that we're seeing really work well and kind of expand across experiences. Third party data sounds nice and it looks good when it's kind of presented to you in a strategy deck. When you're actually trying to work with it, there are a lot of challenges. It's never as clean as you want it to be. There's false signals, there's noise. Sometimes it's fairly slow to update. While we do leverage it, of course, you have to. The first party data is really where the bulk and kind of the tip of any sort of approach where it comes from. So being able to collect data through the user behavior, these interactive type experiences, collecting responses, being able to refine that user profile, certainly better.
The other thing to keep in mind is the underlying data architecture as you're thinking about building it and rolling out PLG. If a lead or prospect is only engaging with your marketing and sales team in a traditional demand gen enterprise sales motion, your marketing automation platform, your CRM are probably sufficient as a data foundation. But when you're talking about PLG and using product data to identify intent and trigger those sales and marketing actions, then you're dealing with product data, and product data usually lives in its own database managed by the product team. So it shifts that source of truth to usually something like a data lake or data warehouse, where you're syncing in product data, you're also syncing in your marketing automation and CRM data, and you're joining those data sets together to be able to identify the appropriate signals. So thinking through that data architecture and making sure that's in place to scale out PLG, I think, is really important. That changes like what your organization needs in terms of capability. You're probably start relying more on data engineers and looking at, events in the data warehouse or data lake, and then pushing some of those segments or high value prospects and signals back from the data warehouse into your marketing automation platform or your CRM platform to trigger actions. When we do that, we use tools like high touch or census, reverse ETL tools to get that data back from the data lake into those platforms. So, thinking about some of those data foundations to have in place as you seek to scale a PLG approach is really, really important. And I think there are some emerging solutions out there that are more catered, that are less rigid than traditional Salesforce or Marketo platforms like Inflection that really focus on PLG led organizations and have much more flexible data architectures that can accommodate the combination of product, marketing, and sales data to drive go-to-market motions.
And I just want to add a piece here is sometimes when I talk about some of these concepts with folks who aren't in the space or the industry, it sounds very simple what we're doing, right? We're using taking some of the data, we're using that. But you kind of alluded to it. In reality, like there is a bit of effort involved in being able to actually activate this data in a way that is going to make sense and it is impactful. There's many layers of that. And that's not to dissuade anyone. The concept is quite simple, what we want to do here, but it takes a bit, and it will, especially with various data systems. And I don't see that changing much, it possibly just even growing in complexity in the future to be able to give like marketers what they need.
Yeah, that's going to be an ongoing challenge, and it's going to be interesting to see how that continues to evolve. So if an organization or marketing team is, getting started with PLG, we usually recommend that, they start small, right? What's the high signal user action that they can test this out with? Can you measure it and can you experiment with it? I mean, do you have any thoughts on like how someone or a team would start small with PLG?
So I kind of alluded to it in the intro section, but the easiest way and the way to not ruffle too many internal organization feathers is to simply leverage your existing lead intake flow process. So the lead form, and being able to identify some of these users who have a higher propensity towards the PLG play, and using that to kind of push them in that direction. Now that's effort to actually like get them in the product. If we discuss more top of funnel, this isn't anything new. Everyone knows tofu, bofu. There's different offers that align to different stages of the customer journey. And talking on the on-demand demos and the interactive demos, like these are very simple ways to just surface them as kind of secondary offers on some of your landing pages or home pages, and to get some signal via that route. You definitely don't have to re-architecture your customer journey and experience too much. You just need to open a little valve, let some of these users in that kind of fit the mold and the attributes that are going to be successful in PLG, and from there kind of work on scaling it out.
Yeah, I think one interesting approach is the pricing page. So pretty much everyone who's going to be doing some kind of PLG and SaaS usually has a pricing page, and it's a great place to segment, high value, high intent visitors from, your lower tier customers that are better served by self-service. So running some experiments on there where maybe they directly onboard or self-service from the lower tier pricing plan versus talk to sales in the higher tier might be, a type of experiment you could run to see if you can, identify those kind of visitors and what that does to your conversion rates and lead quality. And, if you can do that, well, then build it out from there through things like interactive demos, better onboarding, et cetera. I think when we're thinking about PLG, then we want to leave with three main takeaways or three steps to take away. I think mapping and identifying the ideal customer journey that spans top of the funnel visitor all the way through in-product activation and then a sales motion, mapping that and really understanding how you're going to identify intent or what your hypotheses are to identify intent is a really important step to PLG. And once you've identified that, making sure you have the data capture instrumentation right, as well as a plan to experiment your way through it. It's really risky to just roll it out and hope it all works, and can be really expensive, as in the example with interactive demo that wasn't instrumented well and wasn't tested well and just didn't work. So you definitely don't want to go down a blind alley in terms of not testing it and not instrumenting it. And then as you start getting evidence that the PLG motion is panning out in terms of revenue and ROI numbers, making sure your data foundation, your data warehouse, your data lake, and your marketing and CRM platforms are sort of all configured and allow you to scale that motion over time are the things that I'd recommend. I'm wondering if you have any other takeaways.
Viewing this from an experimentation lens, you don't have to invest too much. You do want to have enough, having the proper instrumentation and measurement in place is of course important, but work your way towards a final vision and validate some of the different approaches as you are kind of moving along that path. That would be my only final recommendation.
Always a good recommendation. All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks.
Yep. Till next time.
Talk to you a bit.